Hello students, thank you for signing for this course on udemy.com. I hope that you enjoy it. We're going to begin with an introduction to the course and what it takes to become a software engineer. So I'm going to do an introduction of myself really briefly, and then I'm going to go through everything that you should expect to see in the course. I hope that you enjoy it. I titled it Things That You Need to Know to Start, Continue, and Thrive in This Profession, because I think that's the most accurate thing. So this is me, and I'll be talking a little bit about me, but let me show you first, before I talk about me, I want to go and show you the important thing, right, which is the course outline. So in lesson 1, we're going to go through some definitions. We're going to talk about certifications for this field. We're also going to go through job postings and the job market. Of course, when I'm looking at the job market and job postings, I'm going to kind of teach you, the different types of positions that are out there, what the titles mean. This course obviously is better for people that have either they're starting the profession or they've been in the profession for three or less years in the profession. And what they're trying to do is they're getting out of school, they're trying to find a career, continue their career in IT, especially, of course, in software engineering or developing, and they don't know really how to begin and how to market themselves, and that's extremely important. So I'm going to be talking about some of the definitions, some of the certifications that might be out there. We'll go through job postings. I will literally go through job postings and kind of talk about the differences. Sometimes I know a lot of the students, once they, let's say if you're going through a degree, you finish a bachelor's, for example, the first thing that you're going to do is you get all happy, you're done, you're graduated, and then you're like, what do I do now? Exactly. You start putting resumes and nobody starts calling you for jobs. And I want to give you some tips, because a lot of the time it's not you, it's the resume, how you present yourself too. Also, as you can see on lesson 2, we're going to be covering the right opportunity. Sometimes students try to chew too big. What I mean by that is they finish the master's degree and they think they're going to be getting the job as an engineer level 2 or 3 and making $100,000 a year. I mean, I'm not saying that can't happen, because it truly depends, and we'll be talking about that. It truly depends on you. But however, the norm, on the average, what is out there when you begin, there's going to be a lot of things that you don't know, right? So we're gonna go through your resume. We're gonna talk about the right opportunity, how recruiters can help you and can help you to get that job, that your first new job. Also, we're gonna be talking about salaries and expectations, mentorship and competition in this field, which is extremely important, both of them. In lesson 3, I'm going to debunk some of the myths that are out there. Like myself, I was always taught that, I have a background in astrophysics. My master's is in astrophysics, and I kind of got into computer science from the mathematical side, from, developing Android games and doing more of algorithms and things that are related to mathematics. But you don't really need to know mathematics in order to be a good software engineer or developer. It will certainly help you later on if you wanted to do something like artificial intelligence or machine learning. Then definitely you do need some kind of background in mathematics or calculus, or statistics even. But the truth is that you don't really need mathematics to become a software engineer. But the myth that I want to debunk is the differences between degrees and certificates. I was always taught, like I said, that you need a master's degree in computer science to be able to be a software engineer in the United States. That is no longer true. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was true. Maybe you couldn't get into an interview without having that, but that's no longer true. As a matter of fact, it's the other way around. I will be willing to bet that more than 85%, I'll say 90% of the people that have jobs, software engineering jobs right now, have either only a couple of certifications and not a master's degree or bachelor's degree. So we're going to talk about your background, about expectations. We're going to talk also about how to get the resources that you need to be prepared for that interview. In lesson 4, we're going to talk about your route. Everybody has a different path, and I would like to give you a few examples on how to plan your route to take in your focus area, and also talk about some of the expectations and the why of you want to become a software engineer. I know a lot of people go into this profession because it is a well-paid profession. That is a definite truth. It is a profession that's going to need more people. There's needing more people. Don't have enough people right now in a lot of different fields. But every time that you get into any profession, I want to ask you your why. Knowing your why is important because it's going to determine how well you do as an engineer. It's going to determine how long you're going to last as an engineer. And it's going to determine if you're only for the money in this profession, when things get hard, you're going to give up easily. So we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about how to manage your life, how to time management in your life around you, depending on kind of projects you work on. And we're going to do some exercises, hopefully, that will help you to clarify something. Sometimes it's good to put things on paper. Now, in lesson 5, I'm going to go through the basics needed for your first year of interview and how to get you ready and what do you need to pass the interview. The interview is going to depend, of course, on the position that you apply. But we'll talk about the most average questions that are out there for interviews. Also, we're going to talk about what it means to do back-end, front-end, or full stack as an engineer. What are the differences and why are the good things and not so good thing of choosing one or the other, or how you can route your career to be a back-end engineer, a front-end engineer, or a full stack engineer. In lesson 6, we're going to talk about the interview. Things to know before the interview, things to do or not to do during interviews, and things to do after the interview. I think most people know obviously some basic things to know before the interview and during the interview, but a lot of people don't know things to do after the interview. I see a lot of people that don't know how to do follow-ups, don't know how to thank the interviewers. Sometimes they get too pushy during interviews. We're going to talk about all these things. On lesson 7, we're going to talk about some basic ethics and things such as integrity and humility versus a know-it-all attitude. Software or engineering is a lot about people. Even though you are in a computer, you're going to be in a computer, you're going to be probably programming. Engineer can do different tasks. You can be a scrum master, you can be an engineer, you can be a technical lead, you can be more than administrative things and kind of helping you engineers. So there's different types of engineers, right? A networking engineer or a penetration tester. You can be different things in IT. However, one thing that is very useful and across all of these domains is people skills. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to present yourself in a certain way, and some ethics and integrity, of course. So, and also we're going to talk about your FICO score. A lot of people don't talk about this as an important thing. However, this becomes an important thing, maybe not in your first job, if you're not working for a government or any kind of organization that deals with contracting with the government. However, if you're planning to work for the government or any kind of organization, any kind of service, such as like Army, the Air Force, in which there's, the salaries are bigger, There are much more opportunities once you pass through the associate level or the entry level as an engineer. Then you need to be worrying about your finances and your FICO score. We're going to talk about, as you can see in lesson 8, we're going to talk about security clearances in working for Uncle Sam. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, and some of these things are not supposed to be of public domain, but I'm going to talk about what things you can do in your life to make sure that if you work or you go to school for 6 or 8 years and then you go look for a job for Uncle Sam, they don't turn you down. We're going to talk about government contracting and how to withhold yourself in front of a client and shareholders and responsibilities of a software engineer. Lesson 8 is going to be a brief overview, but I just wanted to add it in here. I think it's important. In lesson 9, we're going to be talking about etiquette and ethics and professionalism. As you can see, I put that a lot in here. Timekeeping, when you're working as part of a team. And then we're going to introduce for the first time, some agile concepts and some project management concepts. Some of them have been around for a long time, from the times of waterfall, and other times are, come through agile methodology, which is mostly used now in software development. So we're going to talk about what is Scrum events. And I'm going to introduce you to one of the first things that engineers should know in the first year, which is the software called Jira and Confluence. And I'm hoping to have a free account to do that, to introduce you on how to do, how to do a Scrum events, just in case you get chosen as a Scrum Master. In lesson 10, of course, we're going to be talking about salary expectations and negotiations. This will be tied down a little bit on recruiters, will be tied down onto your background, what you have done before. And we're going to talk about, of course, the salaries based on the level, the place of residence, the area of specialization and experience. And I'm going to talk about the levels that are introduced for most software engineers in most jobs. Most I'm going to be talking about the first 5 years as a software engineer. On lesson 11, and I think I have a duplicate over here, but on lesson 16, sorry about that, we're going to talk about, I think I thought I have a duplicate, but I guess I went backwards. But on lesson 16, we're going to talk about the imposter syndrome. What is the imposter syndrome? Normally, the imposter syndrome, as we'll see, is you get this new job, you start the job, you're doing pretty well for the first month, and then you start seeing all the things that you have to do, and fear starts to set in. So we're going to talk about overcoming fear, how to communicate with your leadership, how to communicate in a team, and learning the roles in the team, and how do you fit in. On lesson 17, you can see that I titled, You Got the Job, Now What? So we're going to talk about the first week on the job, what should you be expecting in general, and importance of teamwork and mentoring from senior engineers. In lesson 18, we're going to talk about competition. Not necessarily a bad thing. We're going to talk about the good side and the bad side of competition, and how to practice your self-discipline, how to have rituals, learning, researching websites and tools that are used for communications with teams. On lesson 19, I wanted to introduce my little HR tidbit here for this more women entering the profession. So you're a female engineer or you're starting in the profession. I wanted to talk about your kind of role as a female engineer, how to confront and negotiate and possible barriers that you might have. This might not exist on every job or organization that you work for, but I thought it would be a good thing to include it here. I think it always comes down to communication and transparency, but we're going to talk about those things on lesson 19. On lesson 20, finally, we're getting hands-on. We're going to talk about tools that are used in software, hardware, methods used in development and operations, also called DevOps, and we'll be talking about agile methodology. This is going to be covered extensively through the course, just because agile methodology is pretty much used for everything in software right now, and it's part of what we call the system development life cycle. As you can see, it's in lesson 21. So we're going to talk about what is DevOps, benefits of DevOps, and the system development life cycle in software. And also we're going to talk about what is continuous integration, or CI/CD. Lesson 22nd, again, we're going to talk about Scrum. I want to reiterate agile events, because you're gonna be using this a lot. It's going to be a lot hands-on. Lesson 23, for those of you that already probably have heard about Git and GitHub, we're going to talk about version control and what is a repository and working with other team members on Git. I'm going to teach you some of the basic commands in Git Bash, how to use Git to get into repository, how to pull a repository, how to check a repository, things that you're going to be able, how to merge with another repository, things like that. And on lesson 24, we're going to learn Git Bash more, what is PowerShell and the command line. As we go through these things hands-on, some of them are going to be brief, because we're not teaching in this course everything. I could spend basically the whole course just touching or talking about Git, or talking about Git Bash, or talking about PowerShell. But I just want to show you what things you're going to encounter, so that way when you go into the first week in the job, if that way you know how to use it, or you at least have an idea on how to use it, where to go to use it, and what is it used for. Does that make sense? So we're going to do in lesson 24, we're going to talk about the command line, and I'm going to show you text editors such as Atom and Notepad and how to use them in programming. In lesson 25, I'm going to show you the 3 more used IDEs, and we're going to talk about what is an IDE, and these ones are Visual Studio, IntelliJ, and Eclipse. Visual Studio is normally used it can be used for many different things, all of them really. You might develop a preference for one of them. I like Visual Studio for different things that I like IntelliJ or Eclipse. Eclipse is not really my favorite, but it's used more in government. IntelliJ is my favorite. You can do anything in IntelliJ. It's very user-friendly, but it has a more learning or extensive curve. And Visual Studio is very easy to use right away. Very good for auditing files, very good for refactoring code, very good for doing apps. It is used, but it's easier for beginners, I believe, to use Visual Studio. But you will develop a preference on which one. And we'll talk about that. Lesson 26, we're going to get already not only definition heavy, but I'm going to teach you some things that pretty much I learned in the first 3 months of being a software engineer, and that normally are not taught in most courses unless you take just one course on that thing alone. So we're going to talk about what is Maven, what is it used for, what is an XML file, what is a POM file. On lesson 27, as you can see, I have put programming languages here. These are the most used programming languages depending on your area or your expertise, the specialization that you choose as an engineer, or your job objective. This might be different. So for example, somebody more that wants to do websites or wants to do code like that, more like a website front end, will be using more JavaScript. Somebody that wants to do more of a programming, real heavy programming, might use Java or C++. If you're into learning about, cars that drive themselves, for example, or like airplane or factory type programming. Then it will be more like C++. And then if you're more into scientific or AI or machine learning, you want to learn more the Python or Ruby will be more in that. So sometimes you get to learn a couple, and sometimes you have to learn a couple because in most jobs you won't be learning only one. You'll be learning probably most of them, if not all of them, at different points. Pretty much most languages are similar on the basics, and then they kind of go into different directions. And I find out the easiest one for me to learn was Python. JavaScript seems is HTML language, markup language. Some people like that one better. It's easier to learn for beginners for sure. So Python and JavaScript definitely are more user friendly. Whether Java and C++ require more time to learn. I'm not going to go through in this course through each language in itself. I'm just going to show you some of the basics of each one without going into a lot of detail, just because if not, we could have, there are courses out there that touch on, Python courses. I can recommend a few too. I'll recommend some in the resources that are really good for you to learn Python or Java or C++ or JavaScript. On lesson 28, I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about databases, SQL databases, what they are, how they're used for, and jobs that are out there, and what possibly commands. We're going to talk about some basic commands on SQL for you to understand, what it does. And then in lesson 29, we're going to start with virtual machines. We're going to talk about the different types, what are containers, and we're going to talk about containerization and Docker Hub, just running through an exercise for you so you can understand a little bit about what is a virtual machine, what is it used for, and how to run it in containers. In lesson 30, we'll touch on Kubernetes and what is the pipeline and what is Jenkins. These are some of the things that an engineer that has probably maybe a year to 3 years experience might encounter. Virtual machines might be encountered from an engineer that is less than a year of experience, just because they are used for so many different things right now. But this is a good overview. On 31, we're going to talk what is Postman and fixing bugs and resiliency as an engineer. And in 32, I want to show you some of the resource sites that you're going to be using as a researcher and developer, how to use those, and why are they important that you get comfortable with those. Since, believe it or not, a lot of the interesting facts and learning from being a software engineer comes from your own research. We do software engineering, we do a lot of research on our own to find things and figure out things on our own, and sometimes that requires going into sources, reading documentation, a lot of documentation. Then on lesson 33, we're going to re-examine your why after the first year. And these are some tidbits. You've been working for a year, now you need to re-examine your why. What did you learn? How we will talk about tips to improve your resume, your contacts, and how to do some networking. And in lesson 34, we're going to talk about making the jump. When I'm talking about making the jump, I'm talking about going from an entry-level associate position to maybe going to a senior position or in a specialist position that pays 7 figures. So we'll talk about salary and responsibilities, how to evaluate your plans in your future, and some of the expectations that you will need to have or that you will need to see in order to be able to become a software engineer on that level. And in lesson 35, we're going to talk about giving back, mentoring of others, how to plan your life and career, and some obstacles and challenges thriving that you need to thrive in this profession. Now, I told you I was going to come back to go about me, so you know you're in good hands. I began about close to 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago, as a medical laboratory technician. I work extensively as an instructor in astrophysics and STEM professor for 24 years. I pretty much had taught any class of science, known to mankind, or mathematics that you can think of from all levels, from kindergarten all the way to college. And about a year and a half ago, I became a doctor of integrative medicine and a hypnotherapist, and I practiced that as my side job and sometimes free for the community. And about 5 years ago, also I became a Google Scholar. 2 years ago, I won the Bettelman Scholarship for Machine Learning and AI from Google and Udacity. I have won several scholarships through Google, probably 5 or 6 through the last 5 years. And I have several nano degrees from full stack, cloud engineer, machine learning and AI. I have several. And then, of course, as a software engineer, I have worked mostly since I began for the government. As a consultant and also as an Android developer. I also have some games out there. So if you're interested, in creating little games to create little income on the side, I also have done that. But really, my background is mostly in mathematics and astrophysics. So this is my disclaimer. What I'll be teaching in this course, of course, is my personal and professional experience. You might experience variations when you go into work environment or while searching for a position. After all, there are a lot of different variables that enter into achieving the position of an associate software engineer or a DevOps developer engineer. Some of the things that can affect it, and we're going to talk through the course, but could be the area of the country that you live in, even the country, right? Depending on the country. If you live outside of the United States, I'm originally from Europe, so I know a little bit about how things work there too, since my family, my father and my brother actually work in IT as well. So I have some idea of how things work in Europe when it comes to IT. The salaries are different, the expectations are different, and the specializations are different. But some things common to the profession are the same. It comes down also to your specialization. You're not gonna get paid the same for an IT job helping, entry-level associate that does no programming versus a cloud engineer working for Amazon. It's not the same thing, obviously. Your own past background, both in resume and personal. So your FICO score comes important when you're going into profession which you work with the government. Your background becomes important for some professions or some levels of software engineering. However, that doesn't mean that because you have a bad FICO or that you have a bad credit score or you have something in your background that is not really kosher, that doesn't mean that you're not going to become a software engineer. So I don't want you to think that. We're going to talk about those things too. There's most of the job as a software engineer now is done through a lot, especially with COVID-19. We're going to be talking about the difference too of working COVID-19, but they're done from home. And there's plenty of jobs out there. They need people. It also will be different, obviously, if you have served in the military, if you are a citizen of the US for some government jobs. The degrees and certifications, I'm telling you, is a myth, but we're going to talk about that. But that will be a lesser concern. Timing, this is a big one. Sometimes timing is everything. What I mean by timing is can be timing in your life. You just got out of school and you're trying to get a senior job. Maybe that timing might not be right for you. Or timing could be timing referring to, where is the US in jobs, for example. So now during COVID-19, there's a lot of jobs out there for IT. And maybe next year, there might not be so many jobs for entry level, but there might be a lot for like somebody that has 5 years experience. And that timing is important. Sometimes to get the right opportunity, you have to wait a little bit. The time in which you apply for jobs can be important. What type of companies, organizations are you applying? And of course, your desire and your why is extremely important. The truth is that your own effort and belief is the most important thing in becoming a software engineer. And when we talk about your why and your route to become there, I hope that you'll be sharing with me some of your own efforts and and your challenges that you're going through. Hopefully I can help. So this is my introduction. I hope that you will sign in for the course. It's a very complete course. I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I think that this course is different than anything that is out there in IT, mostly because we're not really teaching the theory of everything that you need to learn. I teach you a little bit of everything, but not obviously very profoundly. However, I think some things that are more useful than learning the theory, but knowing when to apply for a job, how to do in the interview, what questions you can ask in the interview, things that are extremely important. So I hope you will join me in this course. Thank you for signing into udemy.com, and I hope you have great luck in your future, and feel free to consult with me at any time. Email me if you have any questions as you move through the course. Good luck.